I'm Zachary Singerman, the founder of Gen Z Jews Fighting Anti-Semitism, and welcome to the Gen Z Jews Learning from Leaders series, where I interview leaders on the topics of anti-Semitism, Israel, and leadership. Today, our guest is Jason Kessler. He has just won the AJC Disruptor Award for creative ways to fight anti-Semitism, and he's also the writer and director of the award-winning short film Death by Script. His screenplay about the artist MC Escher was featured on the 2018 Blacklist, and he has even worked as a writer's assistant for HBO Game of Thrones prequel and for CBS on the show Madam Secretary, and he's even worked in the writer's room of an upcoming limited series for Apple Studios. Mr. Kessler, thank you so much for being on here today.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
So, before we discuss your winning AJC project, could you talk a little bit about your career as a writer and director?
Sure, I'd be happy to. And let me know if you have anything in particular you want me to talk about as I go. But so I've had the benefit of working for some big companies on some big shows. As you mentioned, as the writer's assistant, which is kind of like the most junior writer in the room. I worked on the Game of Thrones prequel, which was super cool. I mean, it was working for HBO from the ground up, building an entire world. And with TV shows, you often create what's called the show Bible, which for lots of shows is just this character tends to be the funny one. This is the neurotic one. But for something like Game of Thrones, you can imagine it's this giant book that talks about the different religions and the different countries. And so it was my job to really be the custodian of that Bible and flesh it out. So unfortunately, HBO didn't make that prequel. They went with another one, but it was a really cool experience. And then I worked for CBS for the show Madam Secretary. And Madam Secretary, for those of your viewers who don't know, was a show about the Secretary of State. And so it dealt with a lot of interesting foreign affairs, international relations subplots. And as the writer's assistant, I was involved with a lot of the process of creating the stories. But one of my favorite roles was interacting with experts in various different fields and talking to them and finding the facts and doing the research to plug into the episodes in the right way, which was really fun. And then I worked for Apple on a show that hopefully is coming out soon and everyone will learn more about. And then in addition to working for big companies, I also get to do projects for myself, like the script I wrote about MC Escher, which was a really fun story, and other scripts that I'm working on to get out there and try and make. And short films like Death by Script that you mentioned, which is one of my favorite things to do. Work with actors, work with other people, let people more talented than me come together to create something that I just dreamed up in my head.
So, interestingly, you studied neuroscience and computer science at Princeton, and you graduated with the highest honors from Columbia Law School. So, how did you decide to make the switch from being a lawyer to being a writer? And was writing something you always pursued on the side?
Yes, I wrote and told stories and shot videos with my friends for as long as I can remember. But I think sometimes we focus too much on what we can do instead of what we want to do. And so I was always one of those very driven students that wanted to get the best grades, wanted to get into the best schools. And that's kind of why I ended up becoming a lawyer, because I just thought it was a good thing to do. And I loved my law school education. I learned a lot of useful things that changes the way I view the world. But when I was a lawyer, I looked around and I realized that some of my peers, they loved the law. They loved spending hours doing all of this stuff that to me felt like homework. And I looked at my bosses and I didn't want their jobs. I didn't want their lives. And so I realized it was time to switch and to think about the things that I was most passionate about and try and figure out if I could restructure my life and spend more of my time doing the stuff that I love.
So recently you won the AJC Disruptor Award for a YouTube series, Jew or False. How'd you come up with that idea, and what's kind of like the show about?
Jew or False is a satirical news show, kind of like Weekend Update on SNL, The Daily Show with first Jon Stewart and now Trevor Noah, John Oliver's show, that kind of comedy. And in particular, Jew or False is about fighting anti-Semitism and calling out misinformation, particularly on issues that are important to the Jewish community. I came up with the idea because I was always a big fan of Jon Stewart's Daily Show. And 7 years ago, there was a segment on The Daily Show where Jon Stewart covered the Gaza war at the time, the 2014 Gaza war. And I listened to the segment, and Jon Stewart, one of my heroes, who I love so much for calling out misinformation, I felt got it wrong. It's okay to make fun of Israel or to make jokes at Israel's expense and to hold whatever opinions you want. But I felt like the way he was crafting his jokes was reinforcing an underlying message that was a narrative that was flawed, a narrative that was based on misinformation and scapegoated Israel. And more importantly, focusing on scapegoating Israel stops us from focusing on what I think is really the problems that are the obstacles to peace, like the incitement of terror and other obstacles like that. So that week, I actually figured out how to edit and shoot video and made my own video that was kind of the satirical news show that I imagined eventually doing again in a more polished form. And I uploaded those videos and just got my voice out there. I've since taken them down so that people don't get confused with true or false. But that's when it was born. And after those first two videos, I bought the domain name trueorfalse.com and just sat on it waiting while I kickstarted my Hollywood career, moved out to LA, started a family. And finally, I couldn't wait any longer. And I had to join my voice to the chorus of people speaking out about anti-Semitism.
So you did just talk about this a little bit. How do you think Judaism has influenced your career in all?
I think that I'm very proud of my Judaism. There's Judaism as a religion, and there's Judaism as an ethnicity. But one of my favorite aspects of Judaism is as a philosophy and a lot of the virtues that have been passed down for thousands of years. And what I see as the Jewish values that resonate with me. Things like the importance of truth, things like the importance of respecting disagreement, and that when we want to solve a problem, we disagree and we debate and get to the right outcome. The importance of embracing being different and not conforming, and not just going along with the masses. I mean, every time we've ever had to exist in society, we've always been a small minority. And so we were used to thinking for ourselves and being different. And part of that is speaking up when you see something wrong. And the importance of tikkun olam and getting a sense that there's something more important than us as individuals. We want to build a better place. So I think all of those things drove me to no longer want to be a lawyer, but to find something more fulfilling, and to write scripts about the things that I've written about, and to just try and be true to my authentic self and go through life spending my time on pursuits that are worthy.
So, do you think there's any, big things that Gen Z Jews, as a generation, not the organization, should do to really stand up against anti-Semitism?
It's a hard one. I think that everybody's going to have different answers, right? And I'm curious to learn from you a little bit what form of anti-Semitism, what forms Gen Z Jews are really encountering the most right now. But I think some key ingredients include, one, educating yourself, making sure that you're informed. When you hear things, always try and double check the sources and Google things and look things up for yourself. Be an independent thinker, ask questions. I also think embracing your own difference, right? Allowing yourself to be the only person in a room who thinks a certain thing or believes in certain principles or is willing to ask a question. Being true to your authentic self and being unapologetic about being Jewish. And speaking up when you see things that you know aren't right. I think that as a Gen Z Jew, if you don't feel like you have all the facts at your disposal, but something's happening that still makes you uncomfortable, that you think something's wrong about what you just said or did, but I don't have a dictionary at my hand of all the responses. Mm-hmm. It's also okay to just talk about how you feel and to speak up and say, that upset me, or that makes me feel uncomfortable or less safe, or the way you're talking about this is not very nice. Too many times people don't appeal to humanity because online we're just so used to trolls and not caring what people think and owning the other side. But we're all humans at the end of the day. I mean, online, no, there's lots of bots and trolls, but sometimes it's good to remind people that we're humans and it's okay to just say you're not being very nice. Oh, and the last thing Gen Z Jews can do is subscribe to Jew or False, where I'll be trying to share the information I know and make you feel less alone and try out different messaging and create a community.
And so, is there anything else you'd like to ask me or just tell Gen Z Jews in general?
Well, I'd love to hear what you think. What are the ways that you think that you can equip yourself to do something about anti-Semitism?
I mean, to me, I believe that, like, the best way to fight anti-Semitism is being able to spot it. And then being able, just when people make, like, a joke about the Holocaust, like one that just goes over the line, or like just like jokes that are very deeply rooted in anti-Semitism, and just being able to like see just like whenever someone's being anti-Semitic, just be able to tell them, hey, that's anti-Semitic, let me show you why this is anti-Semitic, and let me show you how like I can teach you, how I can help you, how I can help the Jewish community as a whole by being able to spot and stop anti-Semitism.
Mm-hmm. And do you have any examples that come to mind or that you feel comfortable sharing about either successes, times that you confronted anti-Semitism and felt better afterwards, or failures where you tried and it was disappointing?
I don't think I have any personal things, I'm forgetting the word. Oh, personal examples yet, because like I've gone to a Jewish day school my entire life, which I've been really fortunate to do. But I know that there's definitely like Jewish teens out there who go to public schools or like non-Jewish private schools who definitely face anti-Semitism a lot and who hear like, oh, Jews deserve the Holocaust, awful things like that, and how it like, just by being able to find this anti-Semitism and knowing how to respond to it, that's the best way to fight it.
Mm-hmm. And so what can we expect next from you and from Gen Z Jews?
I think as of now, just be on the lookout for more Learning from Leaders videos and possibly another summit coming soon.
Very cool. Keep me posted.
All right, well, Mr. Kessler, thank you so much for being here today. It was an honor having you.
My pleasure. Thank you.